How to stop translating in your head. Many English learners struggle with translating every word in their heads before speaking. This habit slows down communication and makes conversations difficult. It can lead to frustration, hesitation, and even fear of speaking English. But how can you stop translating and start thinking in English naturally? Let's dive into a story that illustrates this challenge and how to overcome it. Mark is a 27-year-old software engineer from Brazil. He has been learning English for years, but every time he tries to speak, he finds himself translating every word from Portuguese to English in his head. This slows him down, makes him nervous, and sometimes causes him to lose confidence in conversations. When he talks with colleagues in English, he often pauses for long periods because his brain is trying to translate words. One day, after an embarrassing moment at work where he couldn't respond quickly during a meeting, he decides he needs to change. Mark reads an article about how thinking directly in English can improve fluency. Inspired, he sets out on a journey to stop translating and start thinking in English. Step 1. Surrounding himself with English. Mark begins by changing his daily routine. Instead of listening to Brazilian music, he starts listening to English podcasts. He watches TV shows in English without subtitles and sets his phone language to English. Over time, English words and phrases become more familiar to him, and he starts to recognize them without translating. At first, it is difficult. He feels lost while watching movies, struggling to understand everything. But he remains patient. He rewatches episodes of his favorite series, and with each repetition, he understands more. Slowly, he starts thinking about scenes in English instead of translating them into Portuguese. He also starts listening to audiobooks in English during his commute to work. At first, it feels overwhelming, but after a few weeks, he notices that he can follow the story without needing to translate every word. Step 2. Using simple words and phrases. At first, Mark struggles. His mind still tries to translate everything, but he remembers to keep things simple. Instead of forming complicated sentences, he starts thinking in basic English. For example, when he wakes up, he says to himself, "I need to get out of bed," rather than thinking in Portuguese and then translating it. When he eats breakfast, he describes what he is doing in English. "I am drinking coffee. The toast is warm. Today is sunny." By keeping things simple, he slowly starts breaking the habit of translating. He also changes his approach to learning new words. Instead of memorizing word lists and their translations, he learns words in context. When he learns the word delicious, he associates it with eating his favorite food instead of translating it from Portuguese. This helps him remember words more naturally. Step 3. Practicing speaking every day. Mark starts talking to himself in English. When he goes to the store, he describes what he is buying in English. "I need milk. I will pay with my credit card." He also finds a language partner online and practices speaking with them daily. Little by little, he becomes more comfortable thinking in English. At first, conversations are difficult. He still pauses to translate, but he pushes himself to keep going. His speaking partner, an English teacher from Canada, encourages him to speak naturally and avoid translating in his head. She gives him an exercise. Every day, he must talk about his day for 5 minutes in English without stopping. The first few times, he struggles. He pauses, searches for words, and sometimes switches back to Portuguese. But after a week, he notices progress. His sentences flow better, and he stops worrying about mistakes. He starts to enjoy speaking English. Step 4. Learning words in context. Instead of memorizing long vocabulary lists, Mark begins learning words through stories and conversations. He reads books in English and pays attention to how words are used in sentences. He realizes that understanding words in context helps him remember them better and reduces his need to translate. For example, he reads a short story where the character rushes to work. Instead of translating rush into Portuguese, he understands it means to go quickly because of the context. Later, when he is late for work, he naturally thinks, "I need to rush," without translating it first. Mark also starts keeping a vocabulary notebook. But instead of writing translations, he writes definitions in simple English and example sentences. This method helps him think in English instead of relying on his native language. Step 5. Thinking in English throughout the day. Mark makes a new rule for himself. Whenever he sees an object, he must name it in English. If he is walking outside, he thinks, "The sky is blue. That car is red." If he is cooking, he says, "I need to boil the water first." This habit trains his brain to think in English naturally. He also starts journaling in English. Every night, he writes a short paragraph about his day. At first, it takes him a long time to write, but after a few weeks, words come more quickly. He no longer needs to translate his thoughts before writing them down. Step 6. Being patient and consistent. Mark understands that breaking the habit of translating takes time. Some days are easier than others, but he stays consistent. He reminds himself that mistakes are part of learning. Instead of getting frustrated, he focuses on progress. After a few months, he notices a big change. Speaking English feels more natural, and he no longer panics when someone speaks to him in English. His colleagues at work notice his improvement, and he feels more confident in meetings. One day, he realizes something amazing. He just had an entire conversation in English without translating a single word. Mark's journey shows that it is possible to stop translating and start thinking in English. By surrounding yourself with English, using simple words, practicing daily, learning in context, and being patient, you can train your brain to think naturally in English. It won't happen overnight, but with time and effort, you will see real progress. If you want to speak English fluently, start thinking in English today. The sooner you start, the sooner you will see results. Stop translating and embrace the English language as part of your daily life. So, are you ready to stop translating in your head and start thinking in English? Start today and enjoy your journey to fluency. Thank you for watching English Listening Journey. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Keep practicing, and soon, you will think in English like a native speaker. See you in the next video.